Boom! This is it! Bumalik na ang isa sa mga favorite, mga BTS times. No, I'm just kidding. Ito na. Guys, welcome back dito sa joint podcast natin. Richard Hidana Podcast Fit with Chris Tan. Kamusta, Chris? Good to have you
Okay
back,
naman,
friend.
Richard. Yeah, everything's good. Salamat. There's so many things happening, so many things to talk about, di ba? Kaya
I
it's
know.
always good to be able to connect with you on these things, eh.
I know, and of course, I mean, I owe you in-person meeting. I'll just tell you, like, a couple of people I interviewed earlier na talagang dapat nag-usap kami about some urgent issue. Nagawa ko lang yung isang araw lang. So definitely, God willing, gawin din natin ang mga ganyan. But before, of course, we go to our discussion today, I think both of us, we have to flex our feminist credentials. Yeah. Ayan, happy Women's Day. Yan. Oh, and looking forward, of course, sa Mother's Day. Ang dami pang mga pwede natin celebrate. Ikaw, kamusta, bro? Anong mensahe mo sa ating mga,
Well, since it's a Women's Month, alam mo, siguro ang magandang mensahe, is, alam ko kasi sa Pilipinas, maraming mga single parents and parang 95% of all single parents are women. So,
right.
shout out to all
Oh,
the single
wow.
moms
Yeah,
out
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Marami,
exactly.
It's actually, if I remember correctly, the statistic was about parang 12 or 15 million single moms. Alam mo ba kung sinabong 12 million? Or sabihin natin 15? You're talking about 1 in every 3
Yeah.
women are single moms.
Yeah,
Can you imagine
yeah,
how
medyo crazy. Wow.
how huge that statistic is? 1 in every 3, ah. So, shout out to all the single moms out there kasi, my God, you guys are doing an amazing job. Stick with it. Alam ko mahirap yung ginagawa nyo, balancing being a mother and balancing your work and providing for your family. Don't give up. Keep it up. You guys are amazing. You guys are the heroes of our country.
I mean, I 100% share, your sentiment. Actually, the other day, by the way, shout out dun sa mga nag-join sa atin sa BBC World Questions natin. In fact, one of the questions, which I found quite difficult, was etong tanong about why hanggang ngayon hindi pa legalize ang divorce and abortion, etc. And we know this disproportionately is something that, a lot of women should be heard about. Kasi sila yung na-hurt dito kung hindi sila binibigyan ng karapatan. Let's just be honest about this. And then there were some numbers thrown out there, like the number of out of wedlock or, outside the let's just say traditional family structure people. So you just realize, grabe talaga yung mga odds, structural limitations na hinaharap na ating mga kababaihan. And yet, I also saw kanina may data na lumabas na like more than 70% of all of the like sari-sari store, yung mga small, medium enterprises, these are run by women. And maybe there's an overlap also with a lot of these women who have been taking care of their families and all. Now, actually, before going to Bitcoin, we're gonna get into trouble for this, but bakit kaya ganun, no, sa Pilipinas? Why are the women always taking up the cudgels? Do we have toxic masculinity problem, bro? I know this was not planned, but bigla naisip ko, I think we have to have a conversation because I don't want to be, bro, I mean, of course, Pilipino
Okay.
tayo, mahal natin ang bansa natin, but I'm comparing the Philippines to many other countries. Medyo, why are women always, they have to step up to the plate? Anong kulang sa atin mga Pilipinong lalaki? Alright, I mean, to be honest.
Alam mo, ano yan, actually, it's a vicious cycle from what I see, kasi the fact that there are a lot of single moms raising kids, and then imagine these kids, half of them are men. They grow up to be men without fathers. So wala silang father figure or somebody that they can model after. At ang nakikita nila ay ang mga father figure ay absentee fathers that are not there for them. So it creates a vicious cycle of them already repeating that pattern, unfortunately. Some will be aware and will not repeat it. But pag hindi ka aware sa ganitong pattern, you tend to fall into the same trap. Also, the fact that kung wala kang male figure of authority na kaya mong to model after, which creates a lot of weak men. So, alam mo, as much as I'd like to blame the men and say it's toxic masculinity. Alam mo, there is a problem kasi where men don't have a safe space para makapag-usap or to be able to support each other and grow and learn. Walang ganun. Think about it. May mga women's groups, women's support groups. Are there any for men? Zero. So, that's what gives rise to people like Duterte, mga Andrew
Right.
Tates, because there's a lot of weak men right now that are not able to provide, that are not able to be responsible, and therefore they just look up to strong men to be able to take the cudgels of that responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, but this is where I'll slightly diverge from you. I mean, I absolutely agree with you na hindi mo pwede sabihin na isa lang yung cause. I mean, there's always the chicken and egg question. Pero sa tingin ko, isa sa mga manifestation of toxic masculinity is precisely what you were mentioning, which is hindi tayo incentivized bilang mga lalaki to open up. I mean, I remember one of the few times we had like heart-to-heart discussion, if I can put it, with some of my cousins, na very macho guys, is when, something horrible happened in the relationship. Yung babae gumawa ng something terribly bad, and they were like completely devastated. They couldn't put up the front na, all the pride and,
Yeah.
banter and all. And then like almost magbe-breakdown na. And of all people, siguro na feel nila, eto si Richard, medyo mas matinong kausap kaysa yung mga ibang tao, baka pagtawanan ako. So doon ko na-realize, we really have this kind of a semi-toxic culture where men are disincentivized from having this kind of vocabulary of moral and emotional conversation, if I can put it that way. So for me, it's a manifestation also of a toxic masculinity. So I don't mean toxic masculinity na Duterte style, bastos ka lang, you'll say things like that na, alam mo nga, but it's also yung lack of this kind of a culture of opening up, expressing, showing vulnerability, being emotionally, available, if I can put it that way. Diba? I mean, I don't know. What is your take on that? Before we go back to the father figure issue, because mako-connect din natin sa OFW phenomenon. There's also a sociology, right? But I just want to take your point of view on that also. Yun nga, diba? Yung vocabulary of moral, emotional conversation,
Yeah.
vulnerability, parang disincentivized tayo sa Pilipinas eh.
As a matter of fact, hindi lang sa Pilipinas, all over the world,
Relatively, sorry. I just want to say relatively. Yeah, I want relatively. Sorry about that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, yes, as much as I do agree with you on that, I think, alam mo, let me give you an example of a conversation I had with a group of my friends, na naalala ko, when the guys and the girls were talking, a friend of ours just got married, and then ang sabi ng friend, ibig sabihin yung guy friend namin, sabi sa kanya, congratulations, alam mo ba ibig sabihin yan, parang happy wife, happy life. In other words, when you're married na, throw your opinion away, you have none. It's only her opinion. She's always right. You always say sorry, kahit na mali siya. And it was meant as a joke. And then I realized a lot of guys have this mentality na parang ganun dapat ang buhay. And then I realized na, wait a minute, no. I think that the man has to also be respected, has to also be heard,
Right.
and to be properly to be able to play their proper gender roles. And I think the lack of that delineation of gender roles, nawawala na is what's causing a lot of these problems. And in the Philippines, it's not as bad as in the US. I feel bad for a lot of males in the US, and I think that's why, I mean, this is going to be going off on a tangent, but that's why there's a lot of mass shootings in the States by a lot of these men. And it's because they're, no, na-emasculate na yung karamihan sa kanila eh. So I feel that that's what's causing a lot of the problems that we see in the world. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that the one in the case of US or some of the Western countries, there's another dynamic to that, but the whole Me Too movement, cancel culture, and then, well, let's be honest, some people feel a little bit of that was abused here and there. So it created this kind of a toxic masculinity backlash, hence the rise of Andrew Tate or popularity of people like Jordan Peterson providing, I don't know, psychological counsel and sometimes a little bit more than that. So I'm not romanticizing what's happening in the West. And I think to a certain degree, dahil medyo Americanized, Westernized ang Pilipinas, we're seeing mga pitik-pitik here. But there's definitely peculiarities about the Philippine culture, no? Now, but the other thing you mentioned here is the father figure. I mean, I think, I don't know, I feel blessed na even if my, dad was unwell early on. Nevertheless, he always tried to be that kind of a father figure to me, and that was very important. Also, my grandfather, etc. So, always as a man, I felt the shadow of my forefathers, right, who gave me my family name, etc. Weighed heavily on my shoulders in a good way, in terms of keeping me honest. So, umayos ka, wag mo sirain yung pangalan ng ano mo, di ba? So, I 100% agree with you. At the same time, I think there's also this reality, and this is where unique ang Philippines, di ba? Which is, ang laki ng percentage ng population natin have to go abroad, and that inevitably had certain impact on the family structure. Now, I know complicated yan in the sense that there's also the aspect of the mother going away and then the
Right.
father being left behind and then yung tatay, alam mo na, di ba? I mean, let's be
Right.
honest, hindi natin kailangan sabihin yung mga movies ni Vilma Santos or ano, di ba? So I think the family structure also really suffered in the Philippines because of this over reliance on essentially labor export, Which, to be
Yeah.
honest, I mean, of course, bayani sila para sa akin. At the same time, I know na marami sa ating mga OFW na kababayan, if they had the option, they would have stayed back in the country. Now, of course, there's some people, I don't know, really, really greener pastures, ibang usapan yan. But many people that were working in very difficult places in the world na walang democracy, walang rights,
Yeah.
dangerous jobs, etc. They're not doing it because they would love to go abroad. It was really out of very desperate economic conditions and also sa tingin ko maybe may kinalaman din ito dahil we pay the social cost for itong remittance industry that we created over the past 40-50 years.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then I'm hoping that one day nga that we're not exporting our labor anymore. I think that's what's causing a lot of the social ills that we're seeing is that the exportation of our labor.
Um, Now going back to this, I mean, do you see any efforts to? I mean, thankfully wala pa tayong mga Andrew Tate type. I mean, not that we need, you know what I'm saying, or do we? I
Yeah,
mean, I know
you
there are
know,
like some crazy podcasters out there and all, pero I don't know. I mean, like, but do you see some sort of positive role model effect? I mean, if some people do not have matinong tatay, let's just put it that way. I think like how can we as older men, right? Or like how can we be good kuyas in that sense? Do you think that it's also incumbent upon us to step up to the
yeah.
plate? I mean, not necessarily you and me. I mean, I'm just saying in general, yung mga who were a bit luckier, who had good father figures in life, or at least walang toxic masculinity, even if may pagkamacho sa buhay.
Yeah, and I think naman that what we do, for example, as vloggers and speaking our minds, does help. I noticed that the other day I was just checking my YouTube audience, and I realized I have a very large male following. I was surprised. Parang over 60 or almost 70%, if not parang 70% nga. I don't remember the exact number, but it was surprising because it was not skewed similarly to the general population. It was definitely more skewed towards males. So I think
Mm,
being men that are able to speak our minds, being articulate, being critical thinkers in a way where we're able to look at things and be healthy skeptics
right.
teaches men to do the same and to learn to be able to speak up and not be afraid. Kasi when you don't have a male figure, a male parang figurehead that you can look
Yeah.
up to or
Role
model after,
model, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, you tend to look at role models like the Dutertes, the Quiboloys,
Yeah.
and plus religion plays a big part in how Filipinos are. Remember, we're a very religious country, so we look at religious political figures in a very similar way where they're both idolized and
Yeah.
there's a lot of idolatry going on and that's kind of what replaces that
Mm.
looking for a father figure in a sense.
Right, right. Now, I don't know. I mean, of course, we were here celebrating the Women's Month, and I think part of that was to point out and be honest about shortcomings of men in general. And this is not a judgment on a particular person. I think we just have some cultural problems you have to deal with as male, as Filipino males. But I mean, what is advice? I know again, this was not supposed to be our discussion, but this is what I like about talking to people like you is I can be completely spontaneous. Is there any advice we can give to the younger men in terms of how to better value their women in their lives, whether it's their mom, it's their sister, it's their girlfriend, it's their future wife, ikaw, I mean, from your own life experiences, without going hugot and all. It's like,
Yeah. So ako ang advice na bibigay ko sa mga kalalakihan is siguraduhin nyo that you play your role as a man in a relationship. You need to learn to be courageous. When I say courageous, speak up when you need to, stand up and defend what you need to defend, whether it's your views, your perspective, and boy, be the rock that supports women. So honestly, um, if you ask women, I would bet if you ask a lot of the working women, if you had a choice to just stay home and be a mother or to take care of kids or work, I bet you maraming magsabi, I'll just rather stay home. It's not easy to be earning a living. And the problem is they're doing that because they don't have a choice. And I would urge a lot of the guys out there to please, really magsipag na kayo, magtrabaho na at kumita na kayo. Kasi, I mean, honest, I don't want to, again, make men sound really bad, pero pag makita mo ang daming tambay, mga lalaki karamihan.
mm,
Bihira ka makita ng babaeng tumatambay. Di ba? Ang
Yeah.
tambay, mga lalaki. Yun lang. So, sa mga kalalakihan dyan na tumatambay lang o tumatambay lang ginagawa, magtrabaho kayo, kahit anong klaseng trabaho, just an honest job. Earn a living. Be responsible. That kind of discipline is important to develop character. That's the kind of advice I would like to give all of the men out there.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of tambay, I want to talk. I think that would be a good transition also to our next topic. Well, marami nakatambay dyan. Baka, but you never know. Nagbe-Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. Yeah, you never know, bro. Baka nakaiga lang yan, pero nag-check ng crypto yan. Yumaman
Yeah.
na yan. I'm just saying, bro, don't judge the book by its punit-punit na shirt and labas tiyan, 'di ba? Mamaya millionaire yan sa NFT yan, NFT king yung mga yan. But I completely appreciate. In fact, one thing I really like also about what you mentioned a while ago is yung the whole under the saya kind of discourse. I
Yeah.
think it's very toxic also in the sense that it it sets up people for a suboptimal marriage whereby
Yes.
sa bahay isa yung tyrant, and then sa labas gumagawa naghahanap ng ibang interlocutor yung lalaki. Kasi kung under the saya ka lang at tapos ma-pride ka, maghahanap ka pa rin ng kausap
Yeah.
somewhere else. And you said something very well. This is about partnership. It's not gonna be 100% smooth or symmetrical all the time, but you have to make it work as a partnership. I know maybe this is something new to some people kasi padre de familia and all those traditional
Yeah.
values. But also you don't want the opposite version whereby the man doesn't feel comfortable to have any kind of constructive conversation because nasa bahay si madam nang bahala, si mami nang bahala. And that's where I think a lot of problems emerge. There's no conversation, there's no partnership, and then alam mo na where things could go from there.
Richard, I want to add what you said. That's really interesting. That one thing that will happen, when a man does not speak up and is not heard, and parang his voice is not valued or respected, is he will end up becoming a liability to the woman. That the woman will eventually leave the man or resent the man for being under the saya. At the start,
Yeah.
parang, uy, that sounds like a great idea. Pero actually being under, the woman will eventually resent you and leave you for another man. And then it'll start that same cycle. The man will be strong. The woman, there will always be a power play,
Yeah.
right? The man has to, and the man and the woman, that power play is important. But the man cannot just give into that power play and just succumb and be submissive to that. Because women like a strong man. We see that.
Yeah, I
And
agree, I
a
agree.
strong man means just having a foundation, becoming the wind beneath their wings,
Yeah.
the wall that they can lean on when they need to. So the women can also be strong. Gender roles and equality means that we have different roles, but we are equal. It doesn't mean we're doing the same thing. Man work, woman work. No, pwedeng, it could also be, there are circumstances where the woman works, the man stays home. Basta there's a balance and a respect where both are equal. Hindi yung isa under the other in a very bad way.
Yeah, yun nga. For me, unhealthy yung other version. Parang overcompensation yan in terms of fighting against the patriarchy in the country. But having said that, I mean, one of the things that I always appreciate about the Philippines is if you look at our pre-colonial, pre-Hispanic culture, diba? The whole babaylan culture and all, we always had that kind of more inclusive gender equity kind of culture that unfortunately medyo nilagay ng mga Amerikana, Espanyol ang kanilang patriarchy from the West. But I think it's coming back. I mean, if you look at the strength of the feminist movement in the Philippines, you look at overall gender equity numbers, the number of Filipinos as CEOs, senators, presidents. I think there are very few countries in Asia or in the entire non-Western world who can match us. No, so they're also so that just tells you how amazing our women are. That despite all of these structural
Yeah.
impediments and problems, and yet they're still there. But I think that's not an excuse kasi the reason I'm citing is that I always hear, malakas naman ang mga kababayan sa atin malakas ng ganun. So parang it creates a false sense of, okay na tayo Hindi It's just that they're so good that in spite of the problems they're there. But that doesn't mean there's no some fundamental problems with patriarchy, toxic masculinity, etc. But you're also right. I mean, this kind of father figure or father figures, this is something we have to work on. Kaya for me, the OFW aspect is very important. I mean, how do you make sure that you don't only provide economically but also morally and socially for the family? And as you can see, I expressly am not referring to any religious tradition here because I'm trying to be as secular and fair as possible.
Right. Yeah, that's understandable. And right now, the way it's going, I think it'll take time for us to be able to break that cycle. There are so many, grabe, there's so many men that go around kasi that are and sorry, let me just rephrase that. There are so few men that are capable, that are, whether it's financially, whether it's being responsible, emotionally, mentally capable, na women don't have a lot of choices. And then I think that's why a lot of women end up going after the same men, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
cheating going on, and a lot of men with multiple partners. And
Ay, pag-usapan natin yung mga politiko na yun, mamaya. Just kidding.
yeah, yeah, sige.
Yeah, yeah. No,
That's my take on it.
yeah, so I realized medyo tricky tong discussion na yan kasi, you want to be honest at the same time, you don't want to be completely politically incorrect at the same time, you want to be forward-looking. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate this. This is completely spontaneous. I didn't see this kind of discussion coming, but I just felt it's a discussion we have to have. And siguro in the future, we have to have also more conversations about this, more about Filipino culture and society, right? And some of the things that siguro they're just left unsaid, but they have to be articulated. They have to come out into discussion. Thank you so much, Chris, for that fantastic discussion. So that sets the tone for discussing itong mga tambay. Now, mukhang tambay lang, pero bilyonaryo na. Pag-usapan natin yan. Thank you, Chris.
All right.
Ayan, let's go. Okay, bro. How are you? Kamusta?
Okay naman. Good to see you again, Richard. It's
Good-
always good to have a conversation with you.
Medyo alanganin tayo. Okay, ito again. Happy Women's Day. I mean, talaga ibang klase talaga yung mga discussion natin. I really like it. Vicarious. Versatile. Medyo vicarious din, actually,
Yes.
to be honest about it. Pero mamaya na tayo sa vicarious kasi medyo papunta tayong hugot. To be honest, I'm still recovering from Dune 2. The last thing I expected is actually mahugot pala yung movie na yan. May pagka-past lives. May pagka-ganun na may effect pala siya. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about this because one of the reasons, of course, I always love our conversation is because, Bitcoin is super hot in every sense of the word this year so far. 2024 has been an amazing year for Bitcoin, and except no surprise, right? Because when last December we were discussing, we were, I think, both completely agreed that there will be a very upward trajectory. It's just a question of how upward and how long. Pag-usapan natin later on. But again, as soon as there was a security and exchange clearance of the entry of more institutional investors, which in itself says a lot, we saw a very significant increase. So I think we're looking at 40 to 50% increase in terms of the value of Bitcoin over the past 4 weeks or so. I mean, I was live checking also here dito sa
Yeah.
Pilipinas. There is still volatility. So I mean, this is just the numbers I saw kanina. There's still volatility, but the trajectory so far is good. So yung mga nakinig kay kay Parang Chris nung December, kung naka-invest kayo ng 10,000 pesos, di ngayon at least mga 14,000-15,000 pesos yan. So that's not too bad, right? And of course, accordingly, higher and higher. So Chris, let me first get back to you. So, in what sense have things turned out the way you expected? In what sense there have been slightly unexpected? And what are the things that you want to look forward? Before we go back into the more fundamental questions of Bitcoin and why you should invest in it or not, right? Yeah.
Okay. So yung unang-una is what happened that I expected. The pump is what I expected. What I didn't expect is how big the movement is. Siguro maybe if I'm actually curious to see what we talked about in December. How much I said it was going to be around this time. I think I only said about 50,000. I did not expect it to go all the way to 67,000. Kasi yung all-time high noong 2021 was 69,000. We breached that already just last
Right.
week. And right now, ang nakikita ko, compared to the previous cycles, is wala na yung volatility na na-experience ko nung time ko.
Yeah.
During my time, during the peak and the bear market, talagang grabe yung movement, talagang maka-heart attack ka. Parang may heart attack ka nga pag gumagano yung movement ng Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Ngayon, yung movement kasi sa mo volatile, hindi nga volatile sa akin yan eh. When it goes from 67 to 65, that's not volatile. That for me, that's a normal average market moving for cryptocurrency. So, and if you look at zoom out, pag makita mo yung chart, my God, halos vertical na yung Bitcoin na
Yeah.
na price paakyat. Wala pa tayo sa halvening na napag-usapan natin. That's going to happen in April when the flow of Bitcoin is actually cut in half. Right now, there are about 900 Bitcoins mined per block, per day, excuse me, per day. And 900 per day. Ang binibili ng mga asset managers through the ETF is about 11,000 a day. Tapos binibili nila yan through the OTC desk, the over-the-counter desks. Ito yung mga nagbebenta sa mga malalaking institution. Now, hindi nila binibili sa exchange kasi yung mga Bitcoin, binibili sa OTC desk. Ito yung interesting fact. OTC desks have an all-time low in the amount of Bitcoins they can sell. They're running out. The last time I checked, it was under 2,000 Bitcoins available at any time. And they're buying 11,000 a day. So now they're going into the exchanges to try to buy it. Nauubos yung mga Bitcoins available for sale because 76% of all Bitcoin holders are not selling. So ang konti na lang na nabebenta, and that's what's driving the price up.
Right. So before we go into the halving and all, because that raises bigger questions. I mean, the value of a currency is also its scarcity, right? If you keep on creating more of money, it's like Mickey Mouse money, right? So we have to discuss about the technicality of that, and also some discussion we had about inherent value, right? Where you,
Yep.
where you disagreed with me, but what we'll go back to that now. Just for those na siguro hindi catch up dun sa discussion natin last December, can you shortly explain itong what was this whole ETF clearance, which everyone was optimistic naman. I think very few people thought it was just a matter of timing. I think it happened a few days later than many people expect. I think we were looking at January 10, right? And the bump comes actually, I think, more than a month later. It didn't happen immediately. So the bump has been more actually in the past 4 weeks or so. But since last year, since last November, October, we're looking at 156% increase. So that's significant, right? So again, I'm not haters. Yeah, I mean, I see the facts, I see the numbers, I see the value. That's why I bother to have this kind of discussion. But can you explain first ano yung mga basic terms na yan? So first of all, what is this whole ETF or exchange traded funds drama all about, and why is it so
Okay.
big deal? Yeah.
Okay, so to begin with, kasi before the ETFs came in, they're exchange-traded funds. Para bumili ng Bitcoin, you have to go to a crypto exchange to be able to buy it, which
Exactly.
is very difficult for a lot of people.
Right,
In
right.
the United States, it's actually heavily regulated, and a lot of people don't even understand how to click and trade and buy. Ngayon,
Yeah.
a lot of Americans are used to buying assets through their broker. Yung broker nila are these asset managers or financial
Right,
advisors.
right.
Now, before the ETFs were approved, all these asset managers, the biggest in the world, the BlackRocks, Fidelity, not Vanguard, so BlackRock, Fidelity, and all of those, they hold about $20 trillion in assets for all their customers. One day, all of them decided and they looked at Bitcoin and suddenly said, oh my God, this is an asset that works. This is the future of money. This is a good investment. As soon as sinabi nila, and they were all skeptics at the start. They were all haters. They were saying it's going to go to zero and everything. And now they're believers. So what happened? The narrative changed. And then so as soon as that happened, because they did this internal study, in that internal study, they recommended you need to have exposure in Bitcoin to protect your assets. As a matter of fact, that protection of assets that they're looking for is at least 5% minimum of all the funds. Actually, they were saying 28% of all your portfolio should be in Bitcoin nga, they were saying in that internal study. Pero externally, public relations, their press releases are at least 2 to 3%. So right now, only 0.4% of the entire funds that they manage is in Bitcoin. And they're planning to raise it all the way to 3%, 2 to 3%, up to 4. Can you imagine how much money is going to flow into Bitcoin? So that's what happened. That's what an ETF does. It allows people to be able to buy Bitcoin through their broker.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the latest numbers. One of the data we see is $788 million, like inflows on March 5 alone, right? So I mean, just to put it in context, I think BlackRock's assets are like what 10 trillion at least, right?
Yeah,
So
10,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
saying, at 3% of 10 trillion, will be quite a huge amount of money. So I'm just saying, pitik-pitik pa lang nila yon. But in the same vein, I can also argue back and say, well, maybe this is also them just diversifying and just making sure that they don't lose out or anything. But we can have that discussion later on. So thanks first for explaining that, because the other thing I want to ask also, bro, is, di ba, one of the other problems we have is saan ka bibili ng Bitcoin? Like I mean, I hear a lot about Binance and all of that, but you also
Yeah.
hear a lot of horrible things about a lot of these organizations. They're facing regulatory scrutiny. They're facing, potential criminal charges. Their CEOs because of involvement, I don't know, in evading Russian sanctions, terrorist groups, blah blah blah. Some of the things that we discussed before. So, kung ikaw isang Pilipino, kaya nga I found a lot of videos on Bitcoin on YouTube actually useless because it's a very American centric ano eh. Kung ikaw ay Pinoy, 'di ba? When the tax regulatory environment is very different. Kaya nga sabi ko, ikaw yung perfect person. I always said, that's why later on, we can have a kind of a manual how to do it, the kind of discussions. Pag sa Pilipinas, so ano yun, sa crypto.com, I mean, saan ka, Maya, Gcash, saan ka ba bibili na sa tingin mo is safer? Kasi now it's much easier to buy on, let's say, traditional, and I think nag-set up na
Yeah.
PDAX yata, itong Philippine Central Bank. So, legit na siya in a sense na you don't need to go to dodgy Binance
Right.
types. I'm just being very practical about the technicalities kasi madali ma-intimidate ang tao eh. Diba? Doon
Okay.
saan ako pupunta? Baka ma-hack yung account ko.
Okay.
Kasi ilalagay mo yung PayPal mo. Diyos ko, baka mawala. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So to begin with, the easiest way to do it is through GCash, Paymaya, or Coins.ph. Personally ako, I like Coins.ph because ang bilis sobra. And the interface, yung itsura, yung user experience,
Yeah.
it's so easy to do. And they only do one thing. Crypto to pesos, pesos to crypto. It's so easy.
Yeah.
GCash, Maya, okay lang, pero the rates are not that great. Mataas yung spread, ganon. So,
Right, right.
Coins.ph is the best for Filipinos. Now, when you talk about Binance, Binance is the biggest exchange in the entire world. I honestly think kaya lang tinake down ng US yung Binance is that was before the ETFs were going to be approved. Kasi they wanted all the ETFs to go through Coinbase, which is a US-based company that's regulated. So they wanted to make sure that Americans don't have the choice of going into Binance before that ETF was approved. And lahat tayo dapat American companies ang sinusupport. And I think that's why they did it. Number one. Number two, the legislators and also the federal government went after Binance, I think in part because napahiya sila because FTX, a US regulated exchange, was caught with fraudulent activity, majorly fraudulent activity. So they had to, I think it was almost a PR campaign to just show that, yeah, even Binance is screwing up. So that's what happened. Now, not to say that what Binance did is all good. Kasi Binance tried to skirt around the regulatory issues in the US. That's all they did. Again, if you're trying to follow regulations, mali pa rin yun. And they paid the biggest fine in the entire history of
Billions, right?
Binance.
Yeah.
4 billion.
Yeah, 4 billion.
$4
yeah.
billion dollars. I
Yeah.
mean, that's huge. So, yun. Pero honestly, for me, if you talk about safety of your money, you're not, you might find this weird when I say this. I actually don't trust any entity. That's why I hold my Bitcoin without an entity. I hold it on my own.
Huh.
Parang nakalagay sa mattress ko yan.
Wait,
Parang
wait.
ganun.
So technically, how do you do that? I mean,
Okay.
if you don't, I understand your antipathy with going through, I don't know, BSP or U.S. Federal Reserves, whatever, approved. Because the whole point of Bitcoin was to go a little bit anarchista style, right? But okay,
Right.
but before we go into the more philosophical questions, which we like, how do you do it without going through any of this?
Yeah.
Saan mo ilalagay sa kitchens, sa ref, sa
Okay. So Richard, kasi all our lives we've been taught that you have to put the money in the bank,
right,
right? Now, the only way you don't put money in the bank is if you have physical cash, correct?
right.
Okay. If it's digital, you need to go through a third party, right? Bitcoin is the first time that an asset can be transacted between two people without the need for a GCash or a bank.
Intermediary,
So, ibig sabihin
yeah,
nun,
yeah.
yung digital wallet ko is a Bitcoin wallet that nobody holds. There's no company that owns that wallet. It's literally a Bitcoin wallet. So pag hawak ko siya, ako lang ang may hawak at control niyan. Wala nang iba. There's no third party holding my money. I'm holding my own Bitcoin. That is the safest way to hold your Bitcoin. Not, but having said that, ako, I like the entities that are selling Bitcoin right now, the coins, Gcash, Maya, kasi they're fairly large entities that should be fairly safe. I don't see any problems with working with them for majority of the people. But when you want to truly have full control of your assets, the best way to do it is to have a Bitcoin wallet that is literally off the grid. Yun na yun.
Okay, I appreciate you saying that because I was a bit worried. Are you like lawyering for Binance? No, no, I'm just kidding. But going back, because I'm a little bit more skeptical of Binance, to be honest about it. Imagine, and we see a lot of Chinese, like mainland China based guys doing very big in Bitcoin industry and all. I know a lot of mining being done out there is by folks from China, and they do it in other countries in the Middle East where electricity is cheap because of the. But okay, again, for those who didn't catch our previous discussion, so let's go back to brass tacks, diba? So the Bitcoin is generated through mathematical procedures and all. You need a lot of electricity, I think, for that, right? Last time I checked, so there's some debate about it. And then it's exchange. Like, can you explain to me, like, to people, the skeletal structure? How is it generated? How is it distributed? And how specifically did you circumvent the intermediaries to go directly and have it? Like, did you mine it yourself? Do you have like a Bitcoin generators dyan sa bahay
Okay.
na 24/7 ang mahal sa Meralco?
Okay, so I'm gonna just address muna a couple of things before I get into that. Ano.
Please,
Number
please.
one, it's a fallacy actually, and it's completely false that the biggest exchanges are Chinese, mainland Chinese companies. They're not. CZ of Binance is Canadian. He actually studied in Canada, in Toronto, and then he created it in Canada. So he's not even, Binance is not even registered in China. Cryptocurrency exchanges are banned in China. Mining is banned in China. So right now, there are actually no more miners in China. All the miners are all over the world except China. So they're losing out on that. And the other exchanges, maybe one or two are in China, but the majority are actually outside of China. And they're not even registered in China because bawal eh. So yun lang, just to ano lang, to correct that perception. Okay, so when you talk about Bitcoin, Richard, I want you to think about this. When you, first of all, money. Let's talk about money. Okay, yung pesos na nasa GCash natin, saan galing yun?
You want
Think
to go
about
into
it.
the central banking industry and all the debate about
Right.
monetary policy? Okay, yeah.
Right, and think about it. Who decides how many supply, how much money is going to be circulating, and then how many more are we going to get? How many are we going to leverage? The Red Central Bank, right? Raising interest, lowering interest, and everything, right? And this is where the problem lies with money. Whenever the government needs more money, they print money by borrowing more money, which is what happened in the last 6 years of the last administration. We went from a 6 trillion to 13, now 14, almost 15 trillion debt. When there's that much debt, that's double the amount of money circulating in the country. That actually, more money, less goods, increases the price of goods. That's the basic problem with fiat currency. Wala nang parang layer na pwede nating i-base yung actual value of money. Kung ano
No,
na lang
but
sinabi
no,
ng
Chris,
gobyerno,
it
yun na
doesn't
lang.
work that way. Let's not forget that the Central Bank of the Philippines does not operate in a vacuum. It operates in relation to other central banks. There's
Yeah.
the hot money. There's the market sentiment. There's the market dynamics. It's a quite a spontaneous business. I don't think it's like a bunch of oligarchs sitting there and determining the value of the money. And let's not forget, as far as the value of our money is concerned, you're talking about the sovereign state. The Central Bank of the
Yes.
Philippines represents the Philippine state, which can raise trillions of dollars in tax every year. It's, after all, that's one of the two things that at least the state does to get taxes out of that. So that's what you call sovereign guarantee. I completely agree that there's always this risk that some crazy governments or states, run their money down into the ground by doing hyperinflationary mumbo jumbos. But I'm not sure that's exactly what we're seeing over the past few years or so. If anything, actually, my personal concern is they're too concerned with inflation and with monetary supply. But you're technically correct that during COVID 19, there was a loose monetary policy. A lot of credit was going out. because they wanted to make sure hindi tayo pumunta sa downturn because a lot of businesses were not working. So you wanted the liquidity to be there. Now, I'm just saying that I see where you're coming from. You're technically not wrong to say that, you have a system whereby central banks and governments are very powerful in determining it. But where I think diverge from is, I don't think it's completely like illogical, conspiratorial, or something like that. There is a market dynamic there. I don't always agree with how things turn out, but there's a spontaneity there that I think that's where I philosophically and I would say empirically I kind of
Yeah.
differ. But again, I understand where your criticism is coming from.
It's not that I don't think that I don't say that in a way na parang saying that they have a grand scheme or a plan to take over the world. Not
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's more of I just don't think the government's smart enough to know that what they're doing is actually too inflationary, which is the case in Argentina, the case in Venezuela, hyperinflation in Venezuela. I mean, everyone knows about it. In other countries like Lebanon, Afghanistan. I mean, I can name so many countries that have hyperinflation. All over Africa is hyperinflation. Their currencies are worthless. It's because they don't know better. They think I just print money. I need more money. I'll print more. So that's where the basic problem lies. Now, Bitcoin, the beauty is this: it is not controlled by a government. That's one thing I love about Bitcoin. And if we live in China, would you trust the Chinese government with a CBDC? That they can literally freeze your account if they want to at any time. As a matter of fact, they can do that now with the Philippines. Eh. Kung may ginawa kang transaction, Richard, that's over $10,000, I guarantee you, your bank's gonna call you. And if you do that 2, 3 times, suddenly your bank's gonna be frozen. I got my account frozen a couple of times already. And I got questioned by the bank, why am I moving money around? And
But
I'm
maybe
like,
they
that's
want
my
to make
money.
sure it's not money laundering or doing, mumbo jumbo stuff. Well, there's a logic to that, right? It's not they just want to harass you or something like that.
Sure.
No one likes that experience. I'm just saying, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying it's not like they're totally illogical, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So the irony is this eh. I don't know if you know this statistic, ano, and you can look it up if I'm wrong, ano. Pero the number of money launderers that they actually catch through the banking system is extremely low. I don't even think it's 1%. Because most of the money launderers are not going to go through the bank.
They
They
go
do
to
it in cash.
Bitcoin. They go in
Oh yeah, no, no.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. So yes, they do. Actually, there are money launderers that use Bitcoin. But if
I'm
you look at
just
it in
saying.
totality, the
Yeah.
actual like the total value of money going through money launderers use in Bitcoin is minuscule compared to the amount of cash they use for money laundering. It's literally like ganun kaliit compared to the cash
But
use.
then again,
So
Chris, it's as a share. How much? Again, the amount of Bitcoin
yeah,
is still limited, right? So it's a
yeah,
percentage game so far, and it's a new technology. Again, I'm just trying to be fair by providing the
yeah,
other
sure.
side. But thank you
No,
for
no,
also clarifying. Because ang problema, it's not with you, Chris. I always say there are a lot of people there in the hype industry that they have this kind of conspiracy theory, Alex Jones kind of approach, which I think is a disservice to the good legitimate merits of cryptocurrencies in theory, at least, right? So I'm glad that at least you have this kind of clarification that this is not a conspiratorial view of the
uh,
world, and I'm not a fan necessarily of the state institutions. I'm just saying it's not also totally illogical what they do, but then again, I digress.
yeah.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
So anyway, so the beauty of Bitcoin is this, before Bitcoin, like I said, the only way we can transact is we need a third party that we can trust. That's going to say yes. Chris sent money to Richard. Richard sent money to Chris. Now, that's also the problem that you need a third party to trust. Bitcoin is the first time that I can send value, I can express value over space from me to you right now without the need for a third party to verify and validate that I have the money and I'm sending it to you. And the great thing about Bitcoin is this, compared to the current system, do you know why it takes 2 to 3 days to wire transfer money across countries? Because there is a problem of double spending. There are a lot of accounting errors that happen in the current banking system. There are way too many. And that's why they take so long to be able to move that money because they have to make sure it's correct. And even in that scenario, there are a lot of double spending. With Bitcoin, there's never been an issue of double spending since its inception. And they've tried, maraming tumitingin din sa Bitcoin to show that it can't work, that there will be errors in it. There has been zero errors,
Yeah.
zero
Frictionless.
outages.
Frictionless.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, frictionless. Yeah, it's frictionless. Zero outages. It never goes out. Union Bank the other day. I even tweeted about this. I sent money to my GCash. I never got it, and it took them 5 days to give me my money back. With Bitcoin, if I send it, you will get it. Yun, walang outages siya, walang hacks.
And ang laki
BDO
ng
got hacked.
transaction fees. I mean, GCash, I was just horrified the other day. My goodness. May 2% kaltas sila once you go above just 8,000 pesos. So kung naglagay ka na ng kunyari 100,000 pesos, they get 2% out of that.
That's
I
crazy.
mean, it's crazy. It's that's where I have issues also with financial intermediaries. Abuso na yan. Kasi wala ka naman talagang choice if you want to go through, di ba? They're
Yeah.
ubiquitous na eh. So they're juicing it. Parang it's like they control the highway and then parang bandidos, you just have to go through it. So I completely understand again where is this Bitcoin kind of rebellious idea coming from, and I don't mean it in a negative way because minsan abuso talaga yung mga corporations at saka mga state institutions eh.
And I have to add, that remember, Richard, when you deposit money into GCash, right, and then you send it to me, where's the money? It's in GCash. It's
Right.
still in GCash.
Yeah.
So they're a bank. They're holding the money. All they're doing is an accounting entry. Okay, it's with Chris now. It's with Richard. Richard used it to pay, but it's all in GCash. So in reality, they don't have to charge any kind of transaction fee because they're making money off our money, because they're reinvesting that money, because according to our bank laws, they do not have the parang 10% lang ang reserves that they need to hold.
Exactly.
90% they can do whatever they want, and everything
Exactly.
is an accounting entry.
But basta ako, I'm saying like I have my serious concerns of how abusive this kind of system is, diba? You're right. I mean, it's just an internal ang daming kaltas by the time you cash it out from 7-Eleven or something. Ang dami
Yeah.
nang kumita sa pinaghirapan mo, diba? It's really abusive. Also wire transfers. My goodness. You wire $100, there's a kaltas of
Yeah.
$30. You wire 1,000, there's a kaltas. I mean, it's crazy how much
It's
people
crazy.
So that's why pansin niyo yung mga banks, sarap buhay, 'di ba? Lumalaki at lumalaki yung mga banks. You always wonder like, bakit ang ganda ng business ng mga banking na yan, 'di ba? Ang ganda ng mga branches sila, lumalaki sila all the time. They're making a lot of, money at our expense that while we're not investing it. Yeah. I completely sympathize with you in terms of your grievances here because I personally feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where Bitcoin is very different, kasi banks are centralized eh. So they hold the keys. They're the guards. And you do not have access to your money without their permission. You have to ask for permission to get your money. It is very difficult to move money around. Trying to leave the country with your own money is very difficult. And again, you'll say, yeah, it's AMLA. Yes, but at the same time, it's your money. You really should have a right to your money. Nobody should have to you don't have to defend why you have that money. Unless you've been charged with something illegal, nobody has the right to question you about your money. And that's what I like about Bitcoin. Its property is this: it is borderless. It's not controlled by any government, and because it's not controlled by any government, hindi yan mako-confiscate. Like what the US did with Russia. As much as I agree with it, when they froze the Russian dollar reserve, I like what they did, but it showed how dangerous it is to have one country with that much power to be able to decide unilaterally, I don't like your view, I'll freeze your money. That's what happened in Canada with the truckers. They protested. What did the Canadian government do? They froze their bank accounts. So what I like about Bitcoin is no government will be able to freeze your bank accounts because it's not a bank account. Like I said, you're literally holding your own money.
But obviously, of course, the counter concern there would be there's no guarantee, sovereign guarantee. If something goes wrong, wala kang pananagutan, right? I mean, this is just in a system, right? I mean,
What are you talking about?
let's say,
Guarantee? Like a PDIC?
I don't know, like I don't know, you lose your passport or something crazy
Right.
happens, and good luck. You're never gonna take back that money. But in the bank, you can always show your ID. You can bring a witness. Kung I don't know, namatay ka, it will go to someone else. And you know what I'm saying? I mean.
So
That's the
yeah,
other
so
side. At least alam mo who to go to if even though you don't like that person, right?
yeah, absolutely. And what this is teaching us now is to be very responsible for our own money. Much like if you have a prized possession at home, I'm sure you're very careful with it, right? If you have a nice car, you're very careful with it. You have jewelry. I know people with Rolexes. Very, very careful. They put it in a vault. They make sure they know all the uh, keys, passwords to it, and they lock it up. It's
Right.
the same. When you have something valuable, you really have to know how to take care of it. Yun lang yun. We've been taught to give the responsibility to somebody else, and that's the problem. It needs to really. It's a mindset shift to be able to say, yeah, I'm responsible for my own sovereignty, my own money, and that kind of freedom comes with that responsibility. If you don't want the responsibility, give it to the ETF. They'll take care of it. You don't have real control of it, but at least somebody's, hopefully they don't do a bank run. Yun lang. So that's the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I see the upside, the downside discussion. Siguro, siguro ang magiging disagreement lang natin, I feel one of us is more focusing on the upside here, one side of it. But I think this is part of the healthy discussion. Now, I want to move to the second part of our discussion about Bitcoin, more the practical parts, because you said something very interesting that what you do is you do it without any intermediary. And also your practical advice to people who want to get involved and like want to be a bit conservative about it. Maybe not go and ride the hype machine right away, especially now na upward swing tayo.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? So maybe we can do that in the next episode. Thank you very much again
okay.
for that, Chris.
All
Appreciate it.
right.
Okay, now let's go to the more okay. All right, bro. So in the previous episode, yeah, as usual, me being me, right? I always try to give the devil's advocate to your devil's advocate because you were devil's
I love it.
advocating the status quo, and I was like negating the negation, right? Like it's very
Yes.
very Hegelian, right? That's how I always do. It's my version of skepticism, but healthy skepticism. So, going back to this, so we discussed the general principles about Bitcoin, the pros and cons. Um, but you said that one of the so essentially we're discussing blockchain, right? And we were analyzing and explaining that. But how can you get a Bitcoin without any intermediary? I mean, can you give a kind of a technical advice to people? I mean, you
Mm,
don't want to go through Binance, you don't want to go to
yeah.
PDAX, you don't want to go to I don't know coins or
So
anything. How do you do that?
okay. So what I would recommend for everyone is go through coins, go through Gcash, go to Maya,
When
do
you're
whatever you
starting,
need to do.
especially, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when you're starting, just do that until you're familiar. Now, once you're familiar with it and you have a substantial amount, then you should take it off the exchange and then hold on to your own Bitcoin. It's as easy as just transferring it from, let's say, coins to your own wallet. That's it. So that's actually easier than most people think. It just sounds complicated, but it's actually not. So that's the route I would recommend for everyone. Go through an exchange, buy the Bitcoin, and then when you have it now and it's a substantial amount that you want to play it safe with, then you transfer it to your own wallet. The other option is you can keep it there or you can put it in different wallets, custodial wallets, and then let it earn interest. Yun, okay din yun. Kasi they pay good interest for Bitcoins right now.
And how so? But what about the option of you doing it without any intermediaries? Is there like a you have to go into the dark web, do something like
Okay,
how
okay.
does it work? Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Without spilling
So
beans, I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, no, no. So it's called Web 3. Web 3 is that there is no intermediary. How Web 3 works is each transaction is peer to peer na, no? So um okay, how do I explain Web 3? Okay. I want you to imagine when you log into Facebook, right? They have your credentials, they have your information, they have your data. They have a server where that verifies your login, right? In Web3, it's different.
Mm.
The website is here. Your wallet is where your login information is. All
Mm.
you're doing is allowing them the access to be able to connect with your wallet, which is your parang passport. Parang
Right.
ganun siya. That's the main difference. They don't have your information. It's just saying, yep, I'm allowing you to be able to do this with my data. That's it. So it's limited. And when you buy Bitcoins on Web3, it's still an exchange. You're looking for somebody who has it and you're buying it from them. The difference is it's not held in a with a third party.
Mm.
You're literally going from one wallet to another. The website you go on is just the exchange to be able to create that transaction. So yung wallet niya at wallet mo will just say, okay, send the US dollars, send the Bitcoin. Boom, connected. That's it.
So
There's no
how do you
third
know
party.
hindi
If
nanloloko yung kausap mo? I mean, how do you establish that level of trust and confidence? Because essentially you're saying the website that everyone think is the thing is just actually the meeting place lang. It's just like the park you're gonna
yes,
meet. You bring your wallet, he brings your wallet,
yes,
you do exchange, right? So how do you make sure transactions don't go crazy? Because di ba yung mga
I
cartel
love it.
movie, Narcos,
Okay.
I throw you the bag, you throw me the bag, di ba? Yung mga
Yeah.
ganyan, di ba?
Right.
Tapos nakaparel tayo.
So
Like, how do you do this, amigo?
yeah. So it's fully automated. Okay. So remember, when you get onto that exchange on Web3, right? You've allowed the exchange to know that you have the Bitcoin. The other person goes on the exchange and they know they have the dollars to be able to buy it.
Right.
So when you click exchange, it's instantaneous, switches around, and they know you have it. The transaction will not happen if you don't have the money in your wallet or the Bitcoin in your wallet. And these are called smart contracts that do these type of transactions. Kaya nga they're fully automated, and that's the beauty of it. It's pretty much like AI.
Right.
And there's no more, programmer in the middle. It just happens instantaneously.
So like the artificial intelligence detects the person who wants to do the transaction with you, and then your coins essentially talk to each other via the platform of website, right? Parang that's what you're saying,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So
So they know already what how much you have.
right.
Do you have it covered? Yes, you do. Pag
Yeah.
hindi mo covered, that's
Yeah.
not gonna happen.
So it's not like yung mga hackers going to dark web. Hey, what's up? Code this, that. You wanna send this? Hindi
So
ganon. It's not what you see in Hollywood and all of that. Mga Julian Assange kind of style of hacking and all.
yeah, when I when I hear people kasi say that, it's like they're listening to too much fiction, and it's not at all like that. The
But you
Web
cannot blame
three
them, di
is
ba? Kasi there are a lot of people who are, mystifying Bitcoin to hyping it up, which is what, of course, you're not doing here. Kaya I'm just saying, what we're trying to do here is to demystify not only Bitcoin in general as a principle, but also the transaction aspect of this, di ba? Kaya, obviously, we don't expect you guys to be experts in these things after listening to us, but we just hope that this will inspire people to go and research more on their own. Yun lang naman talaga ginagawa natin. We're just giving them the initial interest level if they want to know more about this. So don't worry if we cannot explain everything here, but I just want people to understand the general principle of how these things take place, because my preconceived notions tayo, because that's what always happens with new technology, because especially
yeah.
if they don't operate on pre-existing modes of interaction, diba? So that's why I'm asking you to do. So what you're saying is at some point most optimal is you learn to do that on your own, to learn the Web3 and do what some of these things. I mean, how large the percentage people are doing that? I suppose it's not that
In the
large
world
yet.
or in the Philippines?
No, as far as the Bitcoin world is, yeah, as far as the Bitcoin, like internationally in the Philippines, I suppose it's not that large yet, right? At least, especially in the
No, it's
Philippines.
not. Interestingly enough, Filipinos are actually very crypto savvy
Ahead of the curve.
compared to the rest of the world.
Ahead
We're
of the curve,
actually
yeah. Yeah.
one of the top countries. As a matter of fact, when I went to the States, you'd be surprised at how much more people in the Philippines knows about Bitcoin than Americans.
Right.
And that's why Americans have to go through an ETF because they really don't understand it. They're kind of behind compared to Filipinos and
Yeah.
Asians. So we're pretty ahead in this. But having said that, probably less than 5% of the Filipino population is into cryptocurrency or Bitcoin in particular. And that's why I'm saying to everyone, you are very early. We are all early. This is like the internet in 1990 when it first started. This is like buying an Amazon stock when it was going from $1 to 10 cents to $10 to back to a dollar. And people are going, oh my God, it's volatile. And companies were folding and closing and going bankrupt, all these internet companies. And what happened now after all of that, that massacre of all these internet companies, the
Dot com
big ones,
bubble,
the
right?
giants came out.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
dot com bubble, yeah, and
Yeah.
now.
Pero look at where the internet is now. And back then they were like, oh my God, this is insane. Pero look at it now. So this is where we're at. This is where the next generation of wealth will be built. It'll be built on the blockchain. It'll be built on Web3. This is the evolution of everything that we do, from banking to voting to intellectual property rights to everything. It's going to change even the way the stock market is played. The Philippine Stock Exchange is losing money. They're not. They're losing a lot of
The
it.
stock markets were always mediocre in Southeast Asia because the companies are just so
Right.
non-innovative. I think that's a structural condition. I think Southeast Asia in general has one of the lowest longitudinal return on. Kaya nga I never invested in stocks in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Useless.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and if you look at the Philippines, right now they're trying they want to list everyone and everything na nga at this point
Yeah.
kasi they're getting desperate. Wala na silang mabenta eh. But there is a big problem with how it's run, and because of cryptocurrencies, a lot of traders, retail traders, are moved away from the Philippine stock market and is now into crypto, for all the reasons that we've mentioned. And crypto is 24/7. You can play it with your phone. You can make money on your phone. You can invest in it. Everything. Walang barriers na eh.
Um, I want to ask also about the other cryptos like Ethereum, etc., like which is seen as like second favorite. At least this is my understanding among friends who are also into crypto. They're saying if you're not Bitcoin, Ethereum, anong take mo dun sa mga iba? Ibang
Okay,
I mean,
so here's my
what's
take
the
on it. Yeah,
second best after Bitcoin? Yeah.
Ethereum's the second best right now.
No, no. For you, what's the second best? My understanding is Ethereum second best among people I talk to, but I don't know. Who am I, right? I don't know about these things yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no. Ethereum is the second best. It's the second biggest.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if Bitcoin is digital gold, we always say that Ethereum is digital oil.
I thought
Ethereum
silver.
is
Okay, oil pala. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, kasi Ethereum is imagine mo na lang yung internet, 'di ba? Is the base layer where all the apps are built. Facebook, Google, everyone.
Right, right.
Ethereum is that base network where all the apps are built now on top of. Everything is built on top of Ethereum.
Medyo
But that's
lasagna
just
style, lasagna, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
like
lasagna.
sure, like a lasagna. But having said that, they're not the only blockchain, but they're the
Yeah.
biggest one right now
Right.
that has most of the apps being built on top of. The next one that's coming up very big is Solana. Okay, and Solana is still undervalued right now at $140 per Solana. That's still relatively cheap. That's still going to go up dramatically in price. But if you ask me, I always tell people, please just invest in Bitcoin because
Yeah.
99% of all the cryptocurrencies that are, going up right now are probably going to be gone in about 10 years or 5 years.
May
So,
Darwinian struggle mangyayari dyan, but Bitcoin at least relatively is established compared to all of these other alternate. If you want to be a little bit more risk appetite, go into the second,
yeah.
third tier kind of. It depends on your risk appetite. I just wanted to also bring that up because I'm hearing people they always kind of divided between Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc. Now, maybe the last part on this. No, I'm glad at least this time medyo practical tayo. We talk about Coin, Maya, Gcash for people who don't want to go to Binance or definitely are not comfortable with your approach. But by the way, how did you learn how to do that? Is there like a programming self-taught stuff? What happened? Or like your
Yeah.
friends help you? Whatever.
So when I learned about Bitcoin, the first thing I did was yun. I'm a contrarian in a way where kukontrahin ko talaga lahat ng sinasabi ko eh. So I actually did my research to prove Bitcoin had no value, was gonna go to zero, is a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme. Lahat na yan, I did all the research. At the end of that, I went all in on Bitcoin, as everyone knows now. I wasn't trying to have a confirmation bias to prove that it was going to be good. When my friend told me, I said, I'm going to prove it doesn't work. The problem was I kept trying to punch holes until I realized it kept holding water. And, I needed a better hole puncher. So that's when I decided to go all in. When to do the transaction, I did it pretty much the same way that I'm telling everyone. I just went to regulated exchange that time. And now the one I'm recommending is the fastest one is coins.ph for Filipinos. It's literally sending money from your Gcash Maya or your bank derecho to coins and then get your Bitcoin. It's that simple. And that's how I did it. And I literally just kept putting all my pesos and converted my pesos to Bitcoin. So that's pretty much how I did it.
Uh, Last one, and I think this is where nag-reply ka talaga sa Twitter. Ako kasi, my stance is, I'm not talking about you, but my understanding is a lot of people who went into Bitcoin are holding a lot of amount in Bitcoin have an interest in more people coming in, not necessarily only because of the principles and convictions that you have in terms of your libertarian anti centralization, but a lot of them the idea is the more people come in, the higher the value. It's as simple as that. Especially if the big people with the big money, right? I mean, the Bitcoin's value is still determined through the network effect, right? The more people are invested in it, the higher the value. I'm not questioning your intention. I'm just saying, but there is also that reality, right? That because a lot of these things, blockchain industry or whatever, a lot of new technologies, they are really adoption dependent, right? If no significant amount of people adopt it, then it's gonna go away. I mean, look at the, I don't know, multiverse blah 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 ni ni Zaki. Walang pumatol na wala. I don't know about the goggles of Apple. Where is it going? Kaya everyone went to artificial intelligence. So as much as I completely agree with you that the internet phenomenon of down and up and down and super up right now should make us optimistic about things that we're not looking into as much. There are also a lot of things that flopped, and there was a lot of hype behind it. I mean, just the
Yep.
metaverse Nizaki. So my concern is maybe some people are overselling this or overhyping it in ways that makes, kasi ganito if people are getting into this thinking tomorrow maging millionaire sila kagad. Ang dami ko nakita mga YouTube na from 0 to 1 million. Like, di ba? It's ridiculous because you're setting up people for disappointment, and at the same time you're making people forget what are the principles behind why Bitcoin came in, because as you passionately discuss, this is not just about being millionaire overnight. So, kaya nga sabi ko, maganda yung discussion ng mga bantay, mga tambay kanto is because there are a lot of people who are just wanting to be millionaire overnight, and that's and they have all of these channels about 0 to 1 million blah blah blah. I mean, don't you feel annoyed by this kind of people, or that they're giving a back? Kasi you're saying this is a sensible thing to do, it will have very
Yes.
good returns. But when other people come in and say, ito yung sagot sa lahat, iniwan ka ng jowa mo, mag-Bitcoin ka. Hindi gumana ng ETSA, mag-Bitcoin ka, right? Hindi magaling ang opposition, mag-Bitcoin. Like, honestly, right? I mean, I'm not trying to throw shades too much, but it makes it sound ridiculous. In the same way that when Robin Hood Padilla, everything happens, sabi niya, charter change ang kailangan natin, it makes charter change look ridiculous. Do you get what I'm saying? When
Yeah.
charter change may have actually value under certain circumstances. Do you get what I'm
So
saying? Yun ang naging problema, nagkakaroon ng reputational problem because some people are being ridiculous about this. They're just overhyping it and in the most preposterous sense.
yeah, regardless of if it's overhyped or not, for me, Bitcoin's Bitcoin. People people can do what they want, and in any industry and anything naman, there will always be the hype boys. There will be people that talk stuff about it, and uh, but the fundamentals are there. It works, and if you talk to the real Bitcoin maxis, they call themselves. Ask them how much a Bitcoin is. Magugulat ka. They're not gonna tell you a Bitcoin is $100,000. They're gonna say one Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin. That's it. Kasi ang pinaka pinaglalaban nilang value ng Bitcoin is the fact that it's self-sovereign. It protects your sovereignty. That it is borderless. That no government can ever control it. No corporation can control it. And it is borderless. And it's completely transparent. And it does not require trust. That's the beauty of it. And you can never shut it down. It's impossible. It's never been hacked. It's never gone out. And I'll tell you, in Web 2, a lot of banks have had outages, have had hacks. Bitcoin has never had a hack. There is no owner. There is no 1-800 number. There is no corporate secretary. There is no beneficiary to Bitcoin. That's why Bitcoin is a valuable asset because of all the things that I mentioned. So that is the purest digital form of asset that is that is about being sovereign, being able to hold it. Na walang may control over it over you. Walang third party. That's why it is. Now, um when you talk about the network effect is what it is. It, like you said, you answered your own question, that it applies to everything. Is it going to be the laser disc, or is it going to be the DVD, or is it going to be the VCD? What is going to be the one that everyone's going to adopt? Is it going to be USB-C or Apple's Lightning port, whatever? What is it going to be? And then the winner, VHS, Betamax. What is it going to be? Right? The people choose. The people chose Bitcoin. And this is the thing about Bitcoin and all other cryptocurrencies. Every cryptocurrency out there has a founder, has a board, has developers. They do updates. They have people that have vested interests in holding shares in those cryptocurrencies. So a lot can happen. With Bitcoin, it is the purest commodity I've ever seen digitally. And that's why it's Bitcoin and everything else. So when you talk about adoption, think about it. Who assigned gold as the one with the store of value? People. because they found that gold was very difficult to mine. It was very difficult to get gold and to actually create gold, that they decided that's the best one to store value kasi ang hirap kunin eh. It requires a lot of work. Bitcoin requires a lot of work to be able to mine a Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, to be able to get it, it is stored not in the ground, it is stored in time. So the next Bitcoin that's going to be mined is in the future. So we have to wait for the future to be able to get it. It's not just going to come out at any time. It's only going to come out in the future. That's the difference. Kaya valuable ang Bitcoin.
Yeah, I appreciate that you made also that distinction that not all cryptocurrencies are the same, right? Bitcoin is very different from a lot of these other crypto founded by people, right? Whether it's ex-Russians who went to Canada, whether it's folks from the that was a good clarification that you make. I appreciate that. Ang akin lang naman siguro my last point on this is I definitely see the potential here. At the same time, I will say we're still in the 1.0 Bitcoin era. So you correctly mentioned we didn't from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3. So marami pang marami pang pwede mangyari diyan, and I think in the future let's have soon a discussion about the halving. Kasi the other thing about currency is also the circulation, as it's not just as a storage of value, but or bearer of value. It's also about how much there's in circulation. Because if you make Mickey Mouse money, it loses value. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. But that's a technical issue I leave maybe for next time para medyo people look forward to. Anyway, I am seeing all sorts of mixture of responses, including people are very happy to hear about this explanation para they hear it from the other side. Thank you so much, Chris. Now, hopefully, the next episode we can go back naman a little bit sa politika, because I think a lot of your fans and our supporters are also there because of our political points of view. But I really appreciate your time and effort to explain the Bitcoin here. Salamat.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Salamat. Okay. Ito na. Let's a little bit of politics. Okay, bro, ito na. Woo! Medyo natapos na yung second edition ng Bitcoin discussion natin. Now, let's go back a little bit to politics right now. Well, before going to our local politics, pag-usapan natin yan. I mean, first of all, how nervous do you feel about this tensions in the West Philippine Sea? I mean, some of itong mga hidwaan na nangyari, medyo mukhang, there are people in China who are saying, it's time for us to show our swords to remind the Filipinos who's the superpower here. May ganun may ganun ang dating at medyo nakakatakot. And at the same time, in fairness to President Marcos Jr. has made it clear. This is not his preference. This is his constitutional duty. He has to protect every inch of our sovereign rights or sovereign territory, for that matter, right? Are you worried about potential conflict here as things going, or you're seeing this as part of just a long telenovela drama?
Yeah, I'm not worried at all kasi honestly, China, I think, has seen with Russia as an example of what can happen if they try to use military might. And they know that the Philippines has a defense treaty with the United States. So dahil doon, takot talaga sila. They do not want to get into a war with the United States. Now, what they're doing is just, these are kind of like covert tactics to push their weight without crossing that red line. Kaya nga water cannons, ganun lang yan, binabangga ka lang. Kasi kung talagang gera gusto nila, they should have just shot one of our ships down, di ba? Or just sank one of them. Pero they're just kind of like bumping it and everything. So harassment yung ginagawa nila. China is very careful. Kasi even when you look at it with the Taiwan issue, kasi we're connected with that eh.
Right.
Kasi the EDCA actually allows the bases to go on top. We're close to Taiwan. Very near Taiwan eh. So
Right.
in that sense, that's why galit sila sa US at saka sa Pilipinas because of that as well. Ngayon, will China ever attack? No, I don't think so. They know the repercussions of attacking, and plus their economy is actually not doing that great right now as well. So there are a lot of factors that play into this on that decision of whether they're going to attack or not. And remember, if they attack, hindi lang US and Pilipinas ang kalaban nila. You've got Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Australia, lahat yan. My God, and many more are going to go against them. They're not going to be able to withstand that.
Marami silang mga people who have an axe to grind with China, di ba? Kasi if you're Taiwan, if you could be next, right? If you're Japan,
Yeah.
you're worried about Taiwan and Philippines, then you could be next, right? So you'll have this kind of ito yung mga law of unintended consequence, because when idiots like Putin invaded Ukraine, they thought they're walking into some village and they'll take over in 3
Yeah.
days, right? The next thing you know, the Ukrainians fought back. The next thing you know, the most developed, advanced countries on earth, from Korea and Japan all the way to Europe, they all gang up on Russia essentially via the brave Ukrainians. So I think you're right in that sense. I think the counter argument always to that would be, hindi kaya maging desperate yung leadership sa China, because the one thing that gave them legitimacy was not elections, was not their lovability, was about economic performance. And now 5% is the best they can really offer, assuming their numbers are legit. So some people are saying baka yun yung maging reason na maghanap sila ng distraction, because sometimes when a beast is wounded or cornered, they're even more dangerous. Again, for me, I think both sides of the argument, we can have a debate about it. But what about the Chinoy community? I mean, do you think there's also a worry about the Chinoy community that this could have a spillover effect also?
When you say a spillover effect, are you referring to what? Like there could be a negative
Yeah, I
repercussions
mean, like
on mga Chinoy?
ridiculous things about like, oh, Chinoys, where do you stand on things? I mean, we had the
So,
Chinoy billionaire in the Philippines openly questioning the president, and you could see the responses were not substantive. The responses were, oh, kasi mga to, hindi naman talaga ganyan. You know what I'm saying? All of that stuff,
yeah.
right? And the reason I'm asking you is because you're a perfect embodiment of, being Pinoy is not about any ethnicity or color, etc. It's about your loyalty, your culture, your identity, right? But nevertheless, I'm sure that some of our Chinoy friends, some of my Chinoy friends, I talk to them, they have been following these things because they have worries that it could boomerang on them, unfairly. Obviously, that's where I come from. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't well, right now the irony is this, I get people that yung mga Dutertards that will say to me, "Shut up ka na lang, Chinese ka naman eh." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Wait, wait. You're criticizing me because I'm Chinese. Get out of the country, but yet the guy you follow
Exactly. I mean, it's
is
ridiculous.
supporting and literally the lapdog of China."
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't understand you. You should be,
Yeah.
kung yun ang sinusundan mo, you should be bowing down to me.
Yeah.
So there's just a
Oh,
disconnect.
you're
It's just
like,
cognitive dissonance all around.
yeah, ano na
So
lang, ang style yata nila, pulot ka na lang ng kahit ano di ba? Like,
nang kahit,
parang ganun, oh, okay ka dyan, pulot natin to. Walang
yung,
walang logic, walang coherence. Oh.
wala na, kaya nga, I don't even bother. It's just
Yeah,
hilarious. So
ridiculous,
ngayon,
bro.
I'm not really worried about the general narrative, or is there like a cohesive parang view of Chinoys for or against with what will happen with China? I don't think so. I think each one has their own opinion based on where their loyalties lie, or maybe because where their business lies. So they have to speak a certain narrative. As we know, some of these billionaires have a lot of businesses in China. And maybe that's why they're a little bit more careful with what they say. So it depends on what your motivation is and what your
Yeah.
intention is. I don't think it's a cohesive, unified, parang view on the Chinese aggression. Eh.
Yeah, which is exactly the point I wanted to hear, which is like just like the rest of Filipinos, there's always diversity of opinion on this kind of issue, also across generation, across socioeconomic classes, and also depending on your orientation and all. Uh, uh, Last one on this short episode before we go to Quiboloy and Duterte. I mean, how do you feel about Marcos? Because he seems to be, hitting all the right notes, no? On South China Sea, West
Okay.
Philippine Sea, his speech in Australia. I just came from Washington, D.C. the other week. They were super impressed about him. I'm heading back to Japan. I was in Japan. They love him. In Europe, they're head over, they're all gaga over him. And I was like, what? Like, but at the same time, I cannot deny. I mean, the guy is not doing too bad on West Philippine Sea. I'm not talking about Maharlika Fund and all of the Mamu Jumbos. I'm just talking about the West Philippine Sea foreign policy. He's not doing bad at all, is he? I mean,
So ano mo, Marcos, the way I see him, he's a very good statesman. Very diplomatic, very, knows how to make somebody feel good. He loves to socialize. His whole life was about socializing. That's why he loves traveling.
Yeah.
What I'm worried about is he's traveling so much that there's really an absentee president, unfortunately. Again, he's leaving for where? Japan now? Or no, Germany or something.
Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, and Germany.
He's
Yeah,
leaving
yeah,
again.
yeah.
He just arrived from Australia. He's leaving again. So,
He arrived
but
from
then,
two trips to Australia. Like,
yeah, oh,
within,
there.
like,
So that just proves that in reality, the president is not as significant as people think, as long as they get out of the way. Kasi
Yeah.
the government body is, there are a lot of people that are actually the machinery that runs the government, and they're apolitical. They're just doing their job. And ang problem lang is when you get a president that wants to, basically throw the kitchen sink at the system and, can I swear here?
maybe
Or wag
not.
na lang. O, sige. Yeah, okay. So
Wala tayong
basically
editor.
wanna just Yeah, they just want to
Teet, teet, teet.
basically,
Okay,
yeah, ruin the whole system for their own political gain. But as long as they stay out of the way, the
Right.
machinery will work.
Yeah.
Marcos has shown that, hey, listen, you're the department head, bahala ka dyan, or the people under you, they all know what they're doing, or go, do it, make it
Right.
happen, ganun lang. So, the less he does, the more the government works. Which is ironic, ano, na
Get out
parang,
of the
wait,
way. Like, you know. No, I mean,
yeah, it's true.
honestly, bro, I mean, nung panahon ni Digong, speaking of absentee landlord, ano, I think Digong is still the gold standard for that, right? He's like the
Yeah.
Bitcoin of the absentee. Like, I mean, the guy was going home to Davao every other weekend or something
Yeah.
like that if he's not abroad. Diba? Hindi lang sa COVID. Naka 40 foreign travels yan in his first 2 years
Yeah.
or so, di ba?
And remember, even
Yeah.
when he was in the ASEAN meets and everything, he didn't even attend most of the conferences. He was asleep.
Yeah.
He did not want to face all these people because
Yeah.
he knew he was going to be criticized. Some of these people are very sharp when they
Ayaw
talk,
talaga
and
sa kanya ng mga ibang ASEAN. It's not true na because Digong was pro-China, gusto siya ng ibang ASEAN. Nakakaya siya, honestly. Yun ang tingin ng ibang ASEAN leader. And this came
yeah.
from our friends in other countries. I'm not gonna mention what. In fact, the term na I use, slavish, that's not from us. It comes from one of the key ASEAN countries. They said, what's up with your president? Like, I get that he doesn't want to be with US and all, pero you don't have to go like that towards China. Medyo isa-isin
Yeah,
yan, di
yeah.
ba? So in fairness naman to BBM, he's traveling, he's not sleeping. Sleeping during during the talks.
Right.
He's giving good talks, very impassioned. Yes, people will say magaling yung advisor na. Well, at least pumili siya ng magaling na advisor. Unlike yung
Yeah.
Digong na yan, di ba? Mga Michael Yang, yung mga ganyan, yung mga advisor niya. Yung mga,
Right.
di ba? So, I mean, I think he deserves a little bit credit for that. But I think this is a perfect transition in the next episode because since last time we talked, you see, big things happened, right? At least on two occasions in Davao and Cebu, the Duterte clan are openly attacking Marcos. Alright, so that's where I disagree, not in general, but now specifically in the sense that you're right that minsan mas maganda the president just gets out of the way. But the problem here is someone else wants to get that seat in Malacanang. And we didn't vote for this person anymore, thankfully, right?
Yep.
So now you want the president to be a little bit more in the town because otherwise the
Yes.
Dutertes will come back. So let's discuss that in next episode because I think this is something very important development aside from Bitcoin since last time we talked, bro. Salamat.
All right.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's do it. Okay, bro, since last time we talked politics, diba? Wow, man. Were you surprised by how all out si Digong, accusing the guy of not only, I mean, he didn't even say pulveron. Like he said, drug addict yung presidente
Yeah.
natin. Tapos nagmumura-mura siya, tapos sabi niya, yung military AFP, I call on you, like, grabe, di ba? Except walang pumatol sa kanya. But that was crazy, right? He went like, forget about guns blazing, he went like bazooka blazing. I mean, were you surprised by how crazy Duterte went? I mean, what is your sense with all of this?
Well, right now, I think everyone looks at Duterte as a crazy person. Okay, not everyone. He still has a significant following that still believes every word he says, which is weird. Harap-harapan, nagsisinungaling siya sa kanyang sariling mga followers. Harap-harapan, he gaslights them like crazy and yet they still believe him, every word he says, which is weird. But it's getting smaller and smaller. I'm telling you, a lot of people that used to believe in Duterte do not anymore, especially when he went against Marcos. So the tide has turned. Ngayon, the problem lang is, when you have an ex-president that's speaking the way he does, with all the threats he's making, these are legal, these are against the law.
Yeah, I mean,
Treasonous yung mga
treasonous.
sinasabi
Yeah,
niya.
I mean, like insurrection.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
what I'm surprised with is that why is the government not going after him? Yun lang.
Exactly.
So this is where I see that in reality, honestly, I think BBM is I think
He's
he's
too kind. He's too kind.
no, I think he's afraid.
He's too timid. That's what you're saying.
He's still, yeah, sure, timid. He's timid. Like, perfect example. He was in front of the interviewer. The interviewer literally said, "Why are you laughing?" He was just like, oh, it's like muckering all these things. He couldn't even speak properly. Na talagang
Alamano
nataranta
niya
siya.
yan. Alamano.
Yeah, so yun ang problem lang kay BBM. I never looked at him talaga naman as a very strong person. I honestly, I have my doubts talaga about the elections. I have my very legitimate, questions about that election. But nonetheless, this is the system we were with, and that's who we're with. I don't have a major problem with him. I just want sana lang na Huwag tayong papander to an ex-president that thinks they can get away with murder, pretty much. And they're getting away with murder because the current administration is not doing enough to be able to show the Filipino people that everyone is equal in the eyes of the law. No one is above the law. Because right now, nakikita natin that there's somebody above the law because the current administration doesn't have either the balls or, like you said, maybe just too timid, or maybe it's the non-confrontational nature of Filipinos na wag na lang natin patulan kahit na gano'n
Hayaan mo na, matanda na yan, mga ganyan.
matanda
Ay,
na,
ay,
si
mga
Raulo na
ganyan.
yan, hayaan mo na. Oo, pero that causes a lot of damage.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of backroom dealings that happened. Because after Duterte did all those things, telling him he's a drug addict, suddenly nag-180. Wala akong sinabing drug addict yan. And let's protect the Philippines. I want Philippines to be all together. Whoa, and at the same time, bigla na lang, uy, ICC not coming in na daw. Whoa, may mga parang backroom dealing sa ata
Well,
nangyari
it
dito.
doesn't
Biglang
look like
nag-change
backroom
yung
because it's
tone.
so obvious that there's stuff going on,
Right.
right? I mean, it's they're not even subtle about it, diba? I mean,
Yeah,
Digong is
exactly.
not subtle at all. That's the problem. But then again, at some point, for me, I always say BBM has to make the decision. I mean,
Yep.
the ICC thing, he cannot dance around it forever. And this is what comes up in my other discussion. I mean, if he doesn't go after the other side based on legitimate, criminal charges, they're gonna come back later
Yeah.
on. I mean, after midterms, it's all about 2028. And who's leading for in
Yep.
the surveys? At least one of them is Sara Duterte. So that's my point. That timidity could come to cost him later on and cost everyone because I think there's a sea change between Marcos and Duterte. Not that Marcos is embodiment of great leadership or progressive leadership. I still have a lot of issues with accountability, justice, so on and so forth. But iba pa rin eh. I mean, at least we still have
Yeah.
a democratic space. I mean, I don't know, Chris said back in the day, during the time of Digong, my goodness, every time I come out and say something, death threats, attack, everything,
Yeah.
right? So, at least now, medyo konting gana. I mean, it's not Sweden, it's not, it's not
Right.
Scandinavia, but at least it's not, I don't know, Narcos, Colombia feel, di ba?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Right now, the political climate is much better than it was 6 years ago. But he needs to step up, and I hope he
Exactly,
does.
exactly.
And I think he should for his own political survival.
Yeah.
Because remember, he's trying to groom family members to be part of to be part of the system, and not only that, if once he steps down as president, and let's say the Duterte's come back, oh, trust me, they're vindictive. We've
Oh,
seen
yeah,
that.
yeah,
What do you think is going to happen to BBM and his family? They might
yeah.
not give him the favors that he got the last time. So yun ang nakikita kong pwede mangyari. That's why, if I were him, man, I know, let's play this Game of Thrones and play it well.
Yeah, yun nga. My sense is the guy knows what's going on and what he needs to do. It's just a question of when he'll do it. My worry is, itong mga foreign travels niya is his way of postponing the inevitable, right? Like,
Right.
wag na lang, like, travel na lang tayo. I feel like that's his way of escaping it. Like, Waldorf
Yeah.
na lang ako, Astoria na lang ako, and
Yeah.
that's my worry, na these foreign trips are just giving an excuse not to make the tough decisions, right? And my other worry
Mm.
is he doesn't also have the right guy. Wala siyang bongo, wala siyang operator. Because you need an enforcer, right? You
Yeah.
correctly
Well,
said, the president is the symbolic figurehead, whatever. But he needs someone there who'll enforce, right? The kind of
oo nga, no?
consigliere. Wala siyang consigliere, right? Any
Well,
godfather has to have a consigliere.
well, he at one point at least had Martin Romualdez.
No, Martin
Speak.
Romualdez is still there. Kaso Martin Romualdez is out there himself, right? In a sense that he wants to run for president, for higher office. So
Right.
he's in the ring eh. What you need is a consigliere in the shadows. Doing
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, right? Martin is
Right.
too much in the ring. Nakikipag ano na siya eh. You need someone in the shadows. That, let's be honest, in Philippine politics nowadays, you need an operator
Yeah.
who fights the good
Yeah, yeah,
fight.
you're right.
You fights the good fight. And yun ang worry ko. Kaya sabi ko, si Ronald Llamas na lang yung operator na. Just kidding.
Oh
No,
my
but
God.
you need that because Digong had bongo. I mean, Digong himself was sabog, right? He's not gonna do the everyday,
Yeah.
enforcement. You need someone dynamic, strong, young even to
Yeah.
do that, or someone with military background, military connection, considering all of the coup plots. But I like it. I like it. I think this sets it on for a very last short episode kasi there's no way we can talk about Duterte without discussing Quiboloy. So I want to get your point of view because remember, we started our discussion today on International Women's Day, and as far as Riza Ontiveros is concerned, and I think we really have to talk about them. She's doing everything she's doing. uh, especially for minorities, oppressed people, and especially for women, yung mga naabuso, mga nabiktima or allegedly. So let's talk about it in the last part. This is also our way of showing solidarity with strong women leaders, and also with all of those unsung heroes and women who have been abused and victimized, and hopefully they will find their voice and also see justice. Salamat bro, I really appreciate this. Thank you so much. Ayan, ito na, penultimate na ito. Okay bro, eto na, penultimate na natin ito for now. God willing, more in the future, yung having of Bitcoin pa, pag-usapan pa natin yung technical yan. No, but let's go to this. I mean, so there are two things I want to discuss. And in a way, they're related. Okay, Riza and Quiboloy, right?
Mm.
Quiboloy because he's connected to
Oh.
Duterte and he represents many things that we kind of touched on in previous episodes or manifestation of a lot of things in our country, including power of religion and religious leaders, right, in this country. Um, but the other one is also the rise of Riza Ontiveros. I think in many ways she is the woman on the forefront of carrying the torch essentially and taking up the cudgels not only for women rights, not only for victims of alleged criminals and abusers, but also for I think really the opposition movement in the Philippines in many ways, right? Kasi sino pa bang aasahan natin? So let's first talk about Quiboloy before we go to Riza, because I want to also get your point of view. What do you think about Riza as the future and present of the opposition and potentially 2028 presidential candidate? We're already talking about her as we speak, with people who are in the political loop, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so did you want me to talk about Riza first or Quiboloy first?
Kibuloy muna, yeah, Kibuloy. I mean,
Ah, sige, so
what is your read of this whole Kibuloy drama? Nagrarally sila,
yeah.
bayani daw sila, kawawa daw siya, baka ma-assassinate siya, yung mga ganun, all of this stuff.
Alam mo, the problem talaga with when you have political, when you have religious leaders that are connected with very strong ex-presidents that are above the law, they act like they're above the law themselves. And
Yeah.
ang nakakagulat lang is, I don't think there's a big support for Quiboloy, to be honest with you, among
Yeah.
the Filipino public. I think most agree that he needs to face the Senate. And I don't understand his fear of facing the Senate because he's not going to jail in the Senate. They just need him
Yeah.
in aid of legislation. So ano yung kinatatakutan niya? For him to say that he's being persecuted and be accused of being guilty. No, nobody's saying that. We're just saying, can you please show up here because there are crimes that have allegedly been committed and we want to check that are the laws working or not? Are they do they need to be changed to be able to protect the rights of women, the children, the oppressed? That's why I'm calling you here because may sinasabing nagawa ka and we're trying to figure out where this problem lies in the legislation. So you are now hindering the aid of legislation. And by him acting the way he's acting, that's the only reason why there's an arrest warrant. Because he was subpoenaed to go and he didn't want to go. And that's it. So it's weird that he's claiming he's being judged and even that's why Robin Padilla, oh my God, Lord, alam mo,
Isa pa yan! Isa pa yan! Sige
yeah,
lang, sige lang.
sa
Anong...
akin ano ganito yan eh. We are the leaders we vote the leaders we have is a reflection of the type of mentality the majority of us have, unfortunately. They reflect who we are. And uh the Quiboloys, the Robin Padillas of the world. Oh my God. It is a sad state of how we are as a nation. And these discussions help improve that. And I'm seeing the slow improvements. It will happen. It just takes time. Now, Quiboloy should just man up, and he's in hiding right now. He has an arrest warrant with the DOJ, with the US about to
FBI,
probably,
yeah, very
yeah,
serious
with the
charges.
extradition. Yeah,
Very
they're
serious charges, yeah.
yeah, that's very serious. So, nagtatago na siya ngayon because, but why is he hiding? Alam mo, if I wasn't guilty, I wouldn't hide. Unless, nga, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this guy. And then plus, alam mo ba nangyari? Di ba recently, I just saw it right now on social media na, is it true that parang now Duterte is the administrator of all his
Yeah, I
properties?
just saw that now. I mean, well, this is just after Duterte kind of threw him under the bus. I mean, have you seen wala si Duterte sa mga pro-Kibuloy rally? Wala mga DDS bloggers supporting him? I know that because, our other good friend, si Mark Gamboa, he's a blogger. He knows what's going on there, right? He's talking, wala nagsusupport daw kay Kibuloy. Si Harry Roque lang daw. Isa pa, diba? We can talk about Harry Roque also for a very long time. Diba? And yet, he's okay to be, I don't know, administrator and all of that. Actually, ang nakita kong tweet was from Senator De Lima, who was like confounded by like, what? Wait, what? Ganon na reaction. So, I don't know what games Duterte is playing here and all, but as far as Duterte's statements is concerned, he didn't seem to be very, di ba sabi niya, magparesto ka na lang, parang huwag ka na magdrama, wala namang mag-assassinate sa'yo, parang ganon yung sinabi niya eh. So, I don't know,
Yeah.
that's crazy, man, the situation between him and Duterte, and let's see. I mean,
No.
again, we have to see more details on that and what Duterte will say. But what about Riza? I mean, what is your take on Riza? I mean, imagine what she's up against. No, there's Robin Hood Padilla, there's Amy Marcos, there's Cynthia Villar. Maybe you want to talk about her too. Still the richest family in the country, right? Next to the C family, the Villar. So, what's going on? Actually, mag ina sila nandun sa committee.
Yes.
Dalawang Villar sa committee talagang. Although,
Yep, you're right.
I mean, there could be three Tulfos in Senate after 2025. I'm just saying, there's Erwin, Ben, andyan na si Rafi. I'm just saying, you're right. In a way, it's also a reflection of our current state of political consciousness. I mean, we used to have the Jovito Salonga type of people in Senate. Just to remind people, it's not like forever tayong ganyan. I'm just saying, there's ups and downs like
Yeah.
Bitcoin yan. But anyway, what's your take on Riza?
Alam mo, for me, Riza really came out strong the first time for me when she went up against Sara Duterte. Alam mo, that was so courageous. Kasi Sara, minamando na niya lahat ng mga lalaki sa Senado. Talagang minamando niya lahat siya. And then Riza comes out there and goes, no, I want you to answer that question. That was the first time I was like, wow. Kasi Sara refused to answer any of the questions during the budget hearings, right? Palagi yung undersecretary.
Yusek. Gusto
Oh,
mo
di ba?
sumagot.
Parang ganon.
Exactly.
And then,
Yeah.
and then all Riza said was, I'm sorry, can you answer that question, please? Ayan na. And then, sumagot pa yung was it Angara who said, no, Sara Duterte does not have to answer that. Parang some other senator. I'm like, are you serious? What the heck? Constitutional mandate. What is your job? To be able to protect the budget of the country by asking questions to the secretary of that department. And you're preventing a senator from asking that. Who are you defending? It's the same with the Quiboloy issue. By them objecting to the arrest warrant, to that subpoena, they're basically not doing their mandate. They're protecting Quiboloy, one person, against all the possible oppressed, to be able to help protect more people. They're hindering the legislation that can protect more people by saying they don't want Quiboloy to go into to the Senate. So Riza, sa dami ng mga kalaban niya in the Senate, from Bongo to Bato, all of them, man, I commend her. That takes a lot of balls. She has balls. And when a lot of the men there don't.
Well,
The men
I gave up on the men. I'm just saying, even the women, like, ang dami mga babae dun sa committee na yan.
Oh.
Like, at nasan sila ngayon? Yung mga nagpapakit dati, women's rights activists daw sila. Nasan na sila ngayon, di ba? I mean, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
who is defending Risa or yung mga alleged victims? Because
Yeah,
Amy
nobody-
Marcos is opening I mean, look at, what do you think about that? Cynthia Villar saying, kasi kaibigan kami, mabait naman siya sa amin eh. Si Robin Padilla naman,
Alam mo-
pinairam ako ng helicopter. I mean, like, yeah, I mean,
So alam mo that reflects majority of how Filipinos think, by the way, Richard. Think about it. I've heard this way too many times. For example, sabihin natin some there's a news that comes out about Chavit Singson, for example. And my God, we all know what kind of a person Chavit Singson is. And then one of my friends would say, oh, pero nakilala ko siya, mabait naman siya. Yeah, mabait siya. It doesn't mean that he's not
kind
corrupt.
to me, she's nice to
He's
me.
such a nice man.
Yeah, man, I
photos
hate
and-
that shit. I really hate it.
Dude,
Ako, I always say,
sabi ko-
he's nice to me, pero trapo pa rin siya. Like, ganun
Yeah,
ako. Oo.
or sabi ko,
Yeah.
even a psycho killer is a nice person to people in public. Ano kala mo, dahil isang serial killer, isang murderer, kala mo hindi yan mabait? Pag makilala mo, ngingiti
Hindi,
ako.
lalong-lalo na yung mga
Pipicture-taking
psychopath,
pa yan.
di ba? Yung mga psychopath, they switch, di ba?
Yeah.
They can be super sweet and caring. Literally, psychopaths are like that, bro.
Yeah. So kaya when people say that, I'm like, excuse me, it doesn't mean that they didn't do anything wrong because they're nice to you.
Yeah,
How many times have I
grabe.
heard
Yung
that with
ganun,
corruption,
oo.
with criminals that steal money? Pero bait naman niya, parang hindi siya ganun. But mabait sa'yo, hindi na ganun. Dude, you can be nice and still steal money. You know,
Yeah,
parang,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
May
people, and
nagsabi ng
here's,
gano'n na someone said, ganit lang tayo sa corruption kung hindi tayo naka-benefit. Kunyari, yung mayor corrupt, pero
yeah,
walang dumating sa barangay, gano'n, magalit ang tao. Pero kung itong mayor na corrupt, nagpa-beauty pageant,
yeah, okay.
nagpa-gano'n, hindi, okay na yan, given na yan. Di ba? It's so self-referential, it's so parochial. So paano tayo mag-ayos ng bansa? Kaya nga sabi ko, while you have people like Risa there, who are clearly there really out of conviction and really risking it all,
Yep.
you cherish that, you amplify that, you support that, di ba? Kasi we don't know
Yes.
when next we're gonna have a senator like that, to be honest. Or even an opposition
Uh,
leader and all, yeah.
yeah, alam mo, that's why nga, ano, a part of me, there's, I'm trying to encourage as many people to run for politics nowadays.
Yeah.
It's a sacrifice. It's scary because the people that run are not doing it to sacrifice. The people doing it know they can because nobody else will, and they know they can profit from it. Bottom line, majority do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not all, but a good majority. Okay. So having said that, yung nakita kong problema with our voting population, with the Filipino populations is, I had a conversation with somebody from the, they're not very well off, okay? They're not very well educated, and I had a conversation with them, and I remember ang tinanong ko was, anong ginagamit mo para mag-isip, para maggumawa ng desisyon? You know ano yung sinagot na nagulat ako? Sabi niya, yung puso ko, yung damdamin ko. Sabi ko, sandali lang. Di ba dapat pag magagawa ka ng desisyon at pag mag-iisip ka, anong ginagamit pag nag-iisip? Utak, hindi puso. That was, I don't know if I was surprised or not, but that was a revelation to me. When they said, ang ginagamit ko para mag-isip ay ang aking puso. I'm like, wow. That's why we're in the problem we have today. Majority of people here, they decide emotionally and then they justify it logically.
Well, I mean,
That's the
David
problem.
Hume, the great Scottish philosopher, would say probably all of us are like that. Some of us are just more
Yeah, sure.
some of
Yeah.
us are just more articulate in putting something on top of that. But I see where you're coming from. Where I diverge from that is that, remember, we are talking about voters who also brought Pinoy to power. We're talking about voters who
Yes.
elected Lenny to power. We're talking about the voters who also brought Vico Soto to power. So, I see where you're coming from. I mean, the reason why I'm doing this is because I do believe in public education. I do believe in instilling critical thinking. Ang worry ko lang with a lot of opposition people is there's so much voter blaming. When in fact, what we have to do is to understand bakit ba't yung puso nila nawala sa opposition. Bakit yung puso? Kasi at the end of the day, let's be honest, anywhere in the world, maybe with exceptions, I don't know, Sweden or whatever, but even not there, I can argue, politics is always about combination of emotions and eloquence and vision. You know,
Yes.
leadership is not just about
Yes.
who has the highest IQ. In fact, there's a lot of studies that show don't put the really smartest people in power. They end up as that evil geek, right? The best leaders tend not to be the smartest people. The best leaders are people who can relate to different people at different levels. So leadership is about Risa Ontiveros won in the election of 2022. Riza Ontiveros also won in the election of so I think that's a very good proof that if you do some tweaking here and there, despite all of the shortcomings with our public education and all, baka makuha mo pa rin ang gusto ng tao. Again, I'm not denying there's a problem with political education. I should probably know that more than anyone else. But my point is, we also have to realize paano natin makuha yung kanilang puso bago natin pag-usapan ang mga mas malalim, mga komplikadong bagay, which marami sa ating mga kababayan don't have the time to do that. They're just struggling to survive. I mean, bro, ang mahal ang living cost sa Manila. I mean, sa Pilipinas. It's
Yes.
insanely expensive. I mean, every time I come from some first world country, I realize how expensive Philippines is for a third world country. It's
Yes.
insane. So if I as a middle class is feeling that, imagine, so for me, that's where compassion comes in, as much as critical thinking is very important. We have to
Yeah.
instill critical thinking from a position of compassion. Yun lang talaga, bro, yun ang stance ko talaga. That's where probably marami na inis sa akin because they were expecting me to, come in and say, you did your best, hindi nyo kasalanan. But remember, this is, our people voted Pinoy. Our people voted Lenin into power, Vico Soto into power. So the question is, how can we make them do the same, especially with Risa showing the way? She was the only one from opposition who made it to the national level. Maybe she did something right. Maybe she represents something right that we have to replicate in the future races. That's where I come from, bro, and I think that's where I differ with a lot of our friends. Who share our frustrations, but perhaps they may not share this kind of what I believe is compassionate position that we have to develop. But politically savvy. I mean, that's because Filipinos are not the only emotional people. Latin Americans are the same. Italians, Spanish are the same. And yet in those countries, you have progressive leaders winning still. Boric, guy is my age. He's the president of Chile, right? Spain has a very progressive government and all of that, right? So that's siguro that's where I slightly diverge from folks, not necessarily from you, but from what I think the sensibility you were expressing a while ago, which by the way really resonates. I realize that it's yung idea na disinformation and lack of education is a source of all our evil. Yes, but let's also not forget, right? We also have an obligation to build those bridges. Maybe there's something Robin Hood Padilla has been doing right that we're not doing, aside from all the wrongs he's doing. Of course, there are a lot of dodgy things, but I'm talking, maybe he's also doing something right that we have to learn from. Yun lang sinasabi ko, bro. But I appreciate. Thank you so much for bravely saying some of these things na kailangan natin ayusin naman talaga eh. Yun nga eh. How can, kaya nga Socrates, I love him, he's my hero. How do you seduce people into truth? So the seduction comes first before enlightenment. You bring
Right.
seduction, then enlightenment. So obviously we're not seducing the right, we're not doing the seduction right before even having the conversation, right? Wala lang, I'm just saying, yeah.
Well, ano lang, I just want to add to that, that nowadays, kasi there's a problem nga with disinformation. Unfortunately, we didn't know when it came in, nobody knew what it was. No, we didn't have a term for it yet nung panahon ni Duterte. He took advantage of that, that it blindsided all of us. Na akala ng mga tao that this is the truth, when in fact there were all the lies, propaganda being spread already and then amplified by the troll farms and all of that, but nobody knew. And unfortunately, a lot of people all over the world have a sheep mentality. They just kind of follow the Pied Piper or the mob mentality. And it's not always the correct attitude to have na parang everyone thinks the same thing, so therefore it's a correct way of thinking. No. But that's how people are, majority. You're right. Now that we know this, now that we know that fake news, propaganda is very real, I've noticed that there are more people that are now courageously speaking out
Right.
when there is a false information that comes out. People now speak out. They now comment. They will now combat against the troll farms and the trolls, and that's important. Like what you do when you argue and debate with mga trolls, that's a good thing. That's important, and I see a lot more people doing that. And because of that, I do see progress where now, kanina lang, I was in the grocery and the bagger said, "Oy, Sir Chris, ikaw yung vlogger, di ba?" Sabi ko, "Yeah." Sabi niya, and then he goes to me, "Sir, sira ulo talaga tong si Duterte." And then I started laughing. I go, "Yeah." Sabi ko, buti naman na nare-realize na rin natin. Oo nga, napapansin daw niya na mas maraming tao nga na nakaka-realize ngayon na talagang matanda na
Yeah, pero
siguro
bro,
talaga.
mamaya pag nakita niya si Banat Bay or si ano, sabi niya, "Sir, na-miss ko si tatay." Di ko.
Sure.
You never know.
That's possible.
Mga politikang tao.
Sure.
I'm just kidding.
You
I'm
know
just
what,
kidding,
Richard,
bro.
you're right. That is
I'm
possible.
just saying, we're nice people.
Yeah, we're nice people. Yeah. So you're
Sir,
entirely right
baka si
about that. That's
tatay.
very possible. And I do appreciate that there is always that possibility. But
Yeah.
I am sensing a shifting
Yeah,
of
of
the
course, yeah.
narrative and the tide. I really am seeing that. But again, I am in my own echo chamber then as well, in my own group. So I don't know if that's true or
Yeah.
not. But I'm still hopeful, and I do believe that. Alam mo, sige, if I had to fall back on something, it's this. I know that people in general have good intentions. I know that the
Yeah,
voting,
of course.
majority of the people that voted really believe in this idea that this person can save us because in the movies, he looked like he was about to save us. Therefore, he's the hero in the movie, he's a hero in real life. I get that. Our job is to be able to, you're right, to be able to reach out to them and be able to connect with them in a way that they can understand. Kaya tingin ko nga yung mga vlogs ko na nagtatagalog ako are able to reach
Correct.
more people from
Correct.
all social classes.
Correct.
Alam beses ko na napansin niya that people sometimes that I'm running on the street that will say to me, "Sir, nakita kita, ikaw yung vlogger." Tapos, so, watching my video, and then it's because it's in Tagalog. And I think that's the important thing
Yeah,
is
tsaka
speak
hindi
to
lang
them
yung
in a
lingwahe,
language that
it's
they can
also
appreciate.
yung yung estilo mo na it's very conversational. Pansin ko yun yung gusto ng tao, yung conversational, spontaneous, hindi yung overproduce. Kasi,
Yeah.
like, isa nga, nagpipicture lang ako ng sarili ko sa EDSA. Like, suddenly someone goes, Sir Richard! Ganun, ganun. And, like, first time ko ma-meet sila, pero parang, ano yan, parang kainuman ko lang dyan sa, ganun yung dating. I think it's also yung accessibility, yung idea na madaling kausap tong tao na to. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not just the language, it's also that kind of relatability factor. I think very, very important yun. Diba? Kahit
Yeah.
konyo yung Tagalog or whatever, natatawa sila, diba? I mean, they know na I'm humorous guy, makakabiro ako or something like that. I realize, and yun din yung strength ng ginawa mo, which is very spontaneous, naka-t-shirt ka lang, diba? Simple lang, nothing, that's a good thing. As I said, you and I were just two human beings, right? We're just two individuals. We have some platforms here and there. But what we're hoping is yung ginagawa natin is it gonna inspire a broader movement of people doing that at every level of society, at every age. Para sa akin, it's always that. It's what we're inspiring, what kind of approach to public. When you have a platform, use it for good. Sana, use it for good. Hindi
Yeah.
lang pa-cute.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing, that on my YouTube naman, ang napansin ko, I did get comments, and I do get comments from people that used to support Duterte.
Right.
That may isa doon, I commended him. Bihira ako mag-comment kasi dami. Pero yung isa, I literally replied to him and said, you know what, that's very courageous for you to even admit that you were wrong with your perspective. And for you to come out openly and say, yes, I did support Duterte. Natauhan na rin ako, na-realize ko nga, mali pala ako. I go, I want to really commend you and let you know what you did. Takes a lot of courage to accept na mali ang ginawa ko. That takes a lot of guts and taking out the ego. Kasi ang hirap tanggapin na mali ka eh. And to say na, oo nga, may nakita akong tama ngayon. And then, sir, alam mo, I hated you before. Busy na I hated you, pero now I'm seeing what you're saying and thank you for always standing up. And I'm like, and I thanked him. Sabi ko, alam mo, nagpapasalamat din ako for telling me that because at least nakikita ko that we're all open to discussions. Kasi I've always said, I'm never against the people. Kahit sinusupport mo si Duterte, I'm not against you.
Hindi ito personal.
I'm defending you.
Yeah.
I am on your side. I'm not against you. Kahit galit ka sa akin, tingin mo ako demonyo dahil kaaway ko yung iniidolo mo, hindi pa rin ako galit sa'yo. Wala akong isang katiting na galit sa'yo. Dahil ang pinaglalaban ko ay ang hindi mo lang alam na pinaglalaban ko. Yun lang yun. And kahit na ayaw mo, I'm still gonna defend you even against all the things that you do. I'm okay with it. Kasi I understand that you just don't know better yet.
Yeah.
I don't mean that condescendingly. I mean that in a compassionate way where naintindihan ko na sa ngayon na hindi mo pa alam, let me be that voice to balance it out. Until the time comes when you will eventually realize it. And if I'm wrong, you can always prove me wrong. I mean, I'm always open to discussions. I always welcome any kind of discussion from anybody. And kahit na-insultuhin mo nga, I'm like, okay, I just won't reply pag ini-insulto ako because it takes it to a different level of discourse. I just don't go there. It's not constructive. But generally, I will defend all people regardless of who you support.
Yeah, thanks Kuya Chris. No, just I really appreciate it. By the way, shout out sa mga followers natin sa Davao. Nakikita ko sa analytics, ang dami natin mga Davao followers sa different platforms. So that tells you, actually, someone joked na frenemy number 1 ako sa Davao before panahon ni Digong. So, but I had fantastic reception when I was there. They're so nice to me, Chris. But still, I criticize Duterte. So I'm just saying, you're nice to me, I appreciate it, but I'm not gonna change my political conviction. No, but I had fantastic time. No, I really appreciate it. I think we come full circle, right? In the first episode, we discussed about one of the manifestation of toxic masculinity is the unwillingness to be vulnerable and to have self-reflection. I think we have the same problem also in politics. This unwillingness to come to terms with mistakes or mistaken views, and so I really the same way I appreciate people are willing to be more vulnerable and get over their ego. I also appreciate yung mga kabayan natin, supporters natin, followers natin, haters natin, whatever, who are willing to also be open about some of the reassessments they have done in lieu of facts that has come to them. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much, Chris. As always, pleasure. 2 hours conversation, parang wala lang. Like a breeze, and I look forward to catching out with person. And hopefully in the future, mag-arrange tayo ng in-person na lang, no? Yung medyo konting budget lang na konti, puro tayo mga And nagsama yung Ilocano at Chinese. No, but I'm just kidding, bro. No, no, I think next time we can do, let's set up something like in person, we sit down somewhere, the usual stuff, different. I
Yeah,
think people would really appreciate that. I think Kudus
I'd
rin
love that.
si Christian Esguerra did something with Ronald Llamas in UP, nag-iisaw sila, nag-uusap. I think mabenta yan, to be honest. And I think it's the right thing to do. It's not just about the views, right? It's the right thing to do. So, yan siguro ang project natin later this year aside from Bitcoin. Or sana, yung mga kikitain mo sa Bitcoin, ilalagay natin sa mga ganyan ng mga production. Maraming salamat, bro. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
God
Richard.
bless you,
I
bro.
always
Mabuhay
enjoy our
ka.
conversation.
Mabuhay ka. God bless and talk to you soon and see you soon, God willing.
Yes, thank you. All right.
Adios. Ayan. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Aba, hindi pa rin nag-turn off yan, ha. Thank you so much, guys. I hope na-appreciate na naman itong discussion natin. The best talaga ito si Kuya Chris. Para siyang Kuya Kim kasi kanina. Yung napakabait, napaka-friendly, gano'n. Yan, si Kuya Chris. Really, really appreciate that. Hopefully, yun nga sabi ko, yun ang plan natin down the road. Really do our own production, hindi nag-realize sa studio. Kaya I appreciate in fairness what Christian did. Yung nasa labas, o po kayo, mag-usap kayo. So, hopefully something I'll discuss with some people about yung mga ganyan type of productions. Because I know people like yung mga, long form, soulful conversations concerning everything. And nakita mo, we can talk about Bitcoin, we can talk about everything, right? So, hopefully yun ang gagawin natin in the future. And sana yan ang maging role model din sa mga ibang mga kalalakihan na hindi lang purong toxic masculinity lang at papogi at banter. Sana mga ganito rin ang discussions off the record, hindi lang on the record. On that note, thank you very much. Mabuhay po kayo. And God willing, tomorrow, God willing, inshallah, kausap naman natin hindi lang si Ronald, but also yung isa pang paborito niyo, si Professor Dr. Lisandro Leloy Claudio from UC Berkeley. So we hope to catch up also on RRL para review of related literature naman tayo. Thank you so much sa suporta nyo. I really appreciate it sa comments, sa mga subscriptions, sa mga nag-stars, sa mga nagbigay ng suporta. Ayan, ano man tawag sa version ng stars sa YouTube. Meron din dito sa TikTok or something. I really appreciate it. Even a single penny. It's about showing support and love. So, thank you so much, guys, for doing that. Alright? God bless. And, medyo late lang yung tomorrow kasi alam niyo naman, si Leloy nasa California. Medyo iba yung time zones. But, we'll try to put it together, God willing. Thank you so much. God bless and talk to you soon. Hindi ko na makita tuloy. Ayan, nandito pala.